Okay, last week we were looking at what we might regard as the ethical core of the hidden words. Shoghi Effendi said the hidden words are Baha'u'llah's greatest ethical composition. But if you just read a random hidden word, it might sound a lot more mystical than ethical. But it turns out that hidden words in the Arabic 25 through 30 seem to be a little mini cluster of ethical injunctions having to do in particular with service to the poor and the downtrodden, the orphan. And that was our main topic from last week. And that topic in turn could be seen if we're imagining that there is some logical progression to the topics as following the overall logic of what we might imagine to be some expression of the essence of all religions, which is first of all that there's something about us which partakes of the divine. Something about us is not on the surface we're just these physical beings, but we are assured that that within us lies something that partakes of the divine. That is our true reality. But secondly, that true reality is something that we have a choice how to stand in relationship to. We can choose to be near or we can choose to be remote. And so there is something at stake. It's not just that everything is created this way and isn't that great. It's more like everything is created this way and we have a choice whether to embrace that or not, whether to align ourselves with that reality or not. And so the whole subject of nearness and remoteness then is what one might identify as the second cluster of ideas in the Arabic hidden words. And that being the case, that there is something at stake in whether we realize that divinity within or not, comes with a certain instructions about how one comports oneself in the world in order to attain that nearness, in order to realize that divine light within. And that primarily consists of our posture towards others, and in particular our posture towards those who are less fortunate than us. That we could say is the third main topic area. And then the fourth would be, well, what happens when you do attain that posture? What's the reward in a way that that we receive for fulfilling those ethical injunctions that are a result of this sort of structure of this moral structure of the universe. So that could lead us, in my imagination, that leads us to this topic for this week, which is that subject of ultimate reunion, of death. But when we talk about death, are we talking about physical death or are we talking about death of self? That's, I think, an open question that kind of hangs in the air when we ask any of these questions about the Baha'i notion of the afterlife, the Baha'i notion of what comes after. Is there something that comes after our last heartbeat in this physical world, or is the afterlife something which comes after that veil of self has been burned away? Is it something, in other words, that can be glimpsed or experienced at some level while still living that next world that is promised? So that's an open question, and we'll have a few quotations. We'll read a few quotations in the words, and then we'll read a few quotations that are adjacent to that further expand on the topics that we see in just these few hidden words. It's just from 31 to 36. But we see right away that death is something, from this perspective of reunion, death is something which ultimately is a messenger of joy and not something that should be a cause of grief. So why don't we start maybe by reading these first few, starting with 31, and then read these other additional quotations.
31 through which one?
31 through 36. O son of being, bring thyself to account each day ere thou art summoned to a reckoning, for death unheralded shall come upon thee, and thou shalt be called to give account for thy deeds.
Sure.
O Son of the Supreme, it made that a messenger of joy to thee. Wherefore dost thou grieve, and made the light to shed on thee its splendor? Why dost thou veil thyself therefrom?
O Son of Spirit, with the joyful tidings of light I hail thee. Rejoice. To the court of holiness I summon thee. Abide therein, that thou mayest live in peace forevermore.
O Son of Spirit, the Spirit of holiness beareth unto thee the joyful tidings of reunion. Wherefore dost thou grieve? The Spirit of power confirmeth thee in his cause. Why dost thou veil thyself? The light of his countenance doth lead thee. How canst thou go astray?
O Son of Man, sorrow not, save thou art far from us. Rejoice not, save that thou art drawing near and returning unto us.
O Son of Man, rejoice in the gladness of thine heart, that thou mayest be worthy to meet me and to mirror forth my beauty.
So the first one that we read about bringing thyself to account each day reminds me a little bit of the virtue of mindfulness. If we're looking, because you hear about mindfulness a lot in modern, spiritual practices, in Buddhism especially, and it's not a word that one finds translated in the Baha'i writings. Mm-hmm. But it's there. I submit that it's there, at least implicitly, in these kinds of spiritual injunctions. And there's a few more that I've pulled together in the handout. So maybe we can read just that section. There's 5 or 6 quotations in that section.
Yeah.
We can skip the first one because we just read that. It's also in Hidden Words.
I think it's my turn.
Oh, yeah. So
Okay.
set before.
Set before thine eyes God's unerring balance, and as one standing in his presence, weigh in that balance thine actions every day, every moment of thy life. Bring thyself to account ere thou art summoned to a reckoning, on the day when no man shall have strength to stand for fear of God, the day when the hearts of the heedless ones shall be made to tremble.
It behooveth every ruler to weigh his own being every day in the balance of equity and justice, and then to judge between men and counsel them to do that which would direct their steps under the path of wisdom and understanding. This is the cornerstone of statesmanship and the essence thereof.
To stop advancing is the means of going back. The bird, when he flies, soars ever higher and higher, for as soon as he stops flying, he will come down. Every day in the morning, when arising, you should compare today with yesterday and see in what condition you are.
From the Dhammapada, mindfulness is the path to immortality. Negligence is the path to death. The vigilant never die, whereas the negligent are the living dead.
What is the source of that?
The Dhammapada is one of the core, it's kind of like the hidden words of Buddhism.
And from Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God.
So it's interesting that in the hidden words it says, bring yourself to account each day, and a few of these quotations talk about every day, but this quote from Baha'u'llah says every moment, which particularly in my mind connected it with mindfulness.
Yeah.
Well, it made me think of Abdul Baha's strive that your actions day by day may be beautiful prayers. That seems like mindfulness
good one,
also,
yeah.
like
Yeah.
try to everything that you do is in a prayerful way.
Yeah.
I'm literally saying, when you die, your life is gonna be entirely laid out. You're gonna have to explain everything, give account to every moment.
Is this news to you? Is this news to you? Because us Catholics we're born into that.
Just keep making your dishes every week, you'll be fine. I think of it more metaphorically than literally, but even metaphorically, I agree. Like I feel like the profundity of it weighs heavier when you think of it in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not asked to be obsessives, so it's not.
No,
I also
but
think
you need to have an
metaphorically.
integrated life. You need to be coherent. In your
Yes.
life.
Yes.
That you're carrying, that you act in accordance with your belief.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And
I also like this notion of negligence.
Hmm.
But there's another one above where it's sort of like you're either moving forward or you're not doing something. It's like there's no going back. It's actually backwards is doing nothing.
Hmm.
There's also so like mindfulness is a big term that gets used around, but awareness is also a big term that's not being used.
Yeah.
Having a concept of awareness, I'm aware that I am acting in a certain way at this moment in time. A profound notion that some people are not aware of how they're reacting to certain things or what's triggering them, and so like I hear that a lot in the psychology realm.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree that that's coming more into play now too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the idea of shifting from every day, that this taking account, and then every moment, because what that says to me that he sees every moment as actually having its own integrity in your life. And there's a way to refer to the things that you're doing from literally from moment to moment, not because you're being obsessive, but because everything actually matters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
you don't live anywhere else other than the moment.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can't change what I did 2 minutes ago. And I can't live now what I'm thinking I might do 10 minutes from now. But I can affect what I'm doing in the moment. So I think that's that mindfulness, and that Eastern religions have that viewpoint, is the eternal.
The eternal
is in the
now.
moment.
Alan Watts talks about that a lot.
Yeah. What's that?
Tillich talks about that. But there's a grace in that. I mean, I think instead of it being, there's the fellow who is judging with the big sword. Just had an image of entry to. What was the guy who used to
The
rule?
Stalin's tomb.
Angels
of
the angels of fascism outside the resting place of the guy who ruled Spain.
Oh,
for all
Franco,
those
not
years.
Stalin.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know where that came from. But I mean, there's grace in not only realizing that you get to hold an awareness of what could have been better, what was in fact worse, what the heart of your intention was. There's grace in that. There's not a point of saying, what a bad person I am to sort of go Catholic for a moment.
Yeah. Sinful natures.
Yeah, you just let go of that, and there really is grace in knowing that every single moment I get to be a better person than my next one.
True. And also, we don't often live in the moment. We often live in the future, and we often live in the past. And our anxieties are for the future, and our anxieties are from the past. And so often, as humanity and our society, we don't actually live in the moment. And so being reminded to live in the moment, I think, is really profound in and of itself.
Yeah.
It makes me think of something we were just with, we were studying Advent of Divine Justice, and what Shuggy Effendi asks us, he gives us a list of the things that we need to do. And I'm always trying to work on true humility. But it's the adjective before humility. It's true humility, because there's false humility, and there's all these adjectives you use. But that one made me think, and this is specifically about what blacks and whites need to do to solve the issue of racism. And if you're doing this only in those certain situations, that's not true humility. That's a performative act. It's not every moment. It's only when, now I have to behave. Now I have to. So it's false, really. But when you become truly humble, you're no longer performing. You're not not even thinking about it. You just are. And to me, that idea of every moment, it just is. It's not something that you turn on and turn off, or that you... And of course, in practice, as we're trying to become better, we have to try in certain situations and work at it. And maybe that's a little bit more of a conscious effort because we're not there yet. But when we've arrived, they call it unconscious competence, is what the term is.
Well, I can count on one finger the time when I actually was 100% in the moment in my life.
Yeah.
Like once. And Gary and I had been doing 10 weeks of this presence process work with a man named Michael Brown. And we do 20 minutes of meditation reflection in the morning and 20 minutes before we went to bed. And there were different kind of cues and mantras and just ways to focus our attention from week to week. And I had what to me was a spiritual experience where in the moment of my breathing, I realized that moment was completely pregnant with everything in my life. Everything, all my relationships, all my memories. It was everything. I didn't need to feel like I was lacking for anything. And I remember coming out of that and saying to Gary, that's the first time I've been in the moment in my whole life, and everything was there. And I haven't, the second finger hasn't popped up.
What do you think allowed it to happen?
It was almost like there was some cosmic attention on my living in that moment. It was like something was going on, I'm not sure. But I came out with the feeling, I don't have to fear anything.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to fear loss, because everything is given. It's all there. I have it. It's within me. So.
I have a dear friend, B, who was describing, she said it would be called a near-death experience, except that she was pronounced dead. She did die, but it was only a matter of minutes, and they were able to revive her. But in describing her experience during that event, it sounds very much like what you just described.
That was there was an article, and I can't remember where I read it, and it was interviewing a doctor was there at the last moments of someone's death, right before they die, and I forget what they call that, so I apologize if I'm butchering it. But the thing that he kept saying was that there is one thing everyone always said, which was, I wish I didn't care so much about the things of this world. I wish I just could have just lived my life. And it was really profound because he said every single one said the exact same thing before they left this world, which was, I wish I could have just been free to do the things that I always wanted to do, or not care so much about what other people thought about me. I think it's the whole not fearing what other people or what society thinks.
So for more on that final moment and the joy that it brings, our second set of quotes, we could skip the first three because we just read those, so there's really only two. One from Gleanings and one from St. John of the Cross.
I have made death a messenger of joy for thee, wherefore dost thou grieve?
With the joyful tidings of light, I hail thee, rejoice. To the court of holiness I summon thee. Abide therein, that thou mayest live in peace forevermore.
The Spirit of holiness beareth unto thee the joyful tidings of reunion. Wherefore dost thou grieve? The Spirit of power confirmeth thee in his cause. Why dost thou veil thyself? The light of his countenance doth lead thee. How canst thou go astray?
The mystery of man's physical death and of his return have not been divulged and still remain unread by the righteousness of God. Were they to be revealed, they would evoke such fear and sorrow that some would perish, while others would be so filled with gladness as to wish for death. Death proffereth unto every confident believer the cup that is life indeed. It bestoweth joy and is the bearer of gladness. It conferreth the gift of everlasting life. As to those who have tasted of the fruit of man's earthly existence, which is the recognition of the one true God, exalted be his glory, their life hereafter is such as we are unable to describe.
Death can hold no bitterness for the soul that loves. It brings with it all the sweetness and delights of love. There is no sadness in the remembrance of it when it opens the door to all joy. Nor can it be painful and oppressive when it is the end of all unhappiness and sorrow and the beginning of all good. Yes, the soul looks upon it as a friend and bride, and rejoices in thinking of it as the day of espousals. Forgive my ignorance, who was St. John of the Cross?
He was a mystic, I think, the 15th century, something like that.
Spanish. He wrote in Spanish, so these are translated into English from...
So, San Juan de la
Saint
Cruz.
Juan.
Yes.
I read that.
Now I know who.
It makes me think of Nancy Puente. Remember Nancy and how she died?
Yes.
Oh,
Who's it? What did you say?
Nancy,
Huh?
so much joy.
What happened?
When Nancy, before Nancy died,
Yeah.
the way she approached
Oh, yeah.
This is
Oh.
Rogers Nancy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, Roger Bachelor's Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her main name was Puente. Well, her
it. One of
first married
one
name.
of her married names.
Yes.
I think it's the same.
I always knew her more.
That was-
I knew her in several different last names. That's, the one I knew her longest was Nancy Puente. So, you know, she was.
I have the best picture, and now it's especially profound, of her and Rick at that meeting when we went to her house.
Oh,
And I've got to find it. I know I have it somewhere.
Of her and Rick.
Her and
He
Rick.
just passed also.
Yeah, they just.
Yeah, and you can tell he's saying something that is just getting her, just feeling loved. You can see it.
Yeah. Yeah. She gave us all such a gift.
Yeah. So, on the subject of the afterlife itself, there would be like a huge volume in the Baha'i writings.
Yeah.
And what I have here, just to seed the conversation, are 10 or so quotations that are not very carefully selected, but I didn't necessarily pick the ones that Baha'is would think of first. There's some passage in the Gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah, for example, that I do quote one of those, but and there are many statements by the Guard, by Shoghi Effendi about it, but I've picked some maybe more or less lesser known ones, each of which, hopefully, spark a different thought or a different conversation. So maybe we could read these and pause after each one in case there's thoughts, because they do go in so many different directions.
Okay.
So
I
I'll
think
start.
it's my turn.
Okay.
Oh, wow, in a provisional translation.
Mhm.
Wow, okay. Although in this first life, the meaning of paradise is his good pleasure and entrance into his cause, after the ascension of the believers from this world, they shall gain admittance into matchless paradises and shall enjoy inestimable delights. Those paradises are the outcome of the deeds which they have performed in this world.
Say what now?
It's interesting, huh?
It sounds like the many worlds of God we actually create.
Yeah. It's almost as though, they're an outcome of what we've done.
Hey, one more apple.
Oh, yeah.
One more, yeah.
Yes.
All right.
And they're multiple.
There's multiple paradises, so that's
Yeah.
interesting.
You don't hear that.
We have heard the phrase, all the worlds of God,
Right.
more
or
than once.
what is
Yeah.
the many
Yeah.
mansions?
Yeah, the many mansions. So just as this world seems to have stages of consciousness, there's a consciousness of our pets and our consciousness, the consciousness of a plant and so forth.
That's what I have.
Oh, yeah? I've got a pebble, so there.
So from that perspective, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that there would be further realms of consciousness, multiple realms of consciousness beyond the ones that we can conceive of.
Well, and if our understanding is that the soul will continue to progress eternally, it kind of seems like that makes sense, that there would be some kind of levels or something,
Yeah,
or at least I don't know.
yeah. Although
Spirals.
Yes, yeah.
although progress itself implies the passage of time, and if the next world is not bound by space and time, then what do we mean when we talk about progress of the next world? Clearly it has some sort of meaning because it's said all the time in the Baha'i writings, but it's a metaphor, I suppose, and
Development.
we can't really go beyond that.
Is it maybe have something to do with nearness to God?
Mhm.
So it's not time and place, but it's somehow a state of being.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to focus on the outcome of deeds because he didn't say it was the outcome of your thoughts or your faith.
Yes.
Or what you
Or your
meant to do.
belief.
Yes. Yes.
It's,
I was gonna
It's
get
an outcome
it
of your
comes from
deeds.
your deeds.
Actions.
So
So what counts as a deed?
yeah, what
Because
does count as
thoughts
a
are
deed?
expressed in words, and especially in these electronic, days of electronic media, so much of human action takes place in a linguistic space, which is not a space where we're physically doing something with or to or for someone. We're exchanging words. So, and those words have an impact.
Unless they ended words.
Right. I mean, there's
Beginning words
yes,
and
there's
ending
stuff
words.
that begins with words and ends with words, and then there's stuff that begins with words and ends with violence,
That's an act.
Right.
or begins with words and ends with love. What were you saying, Kim?
Well, just
Sorry.
that you can offer words of kindness to someone. That's a deed.
Surely that's a deed.
And
That's what I'm
it's
getting
words,
at.
but
Yeah.
but it's
They have an effect on someone's feelings.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
That
words
must
are
be what
deeds of
elevates.
a certain kind, and they can be very, very powerful deeds. They can change someone's life for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's what deed means. Is deed is something that affects something, effects something,
Yeah.
that brings about something new in some way.
Mm.
I don't know whether there are any writings that say there's kind of a hierarchy of deeds from good to lesser good. I
Yeah.
don't know how
Or mortal to
would
venial.
even determine that.
Well, let me throw out a mind game here to see if we can move through this. I'm imagining the story of the Good Samaritan. Right? Here's this guy, his whole body is all busted up, lying by the side of the road. And his religious buddies, the priest and the whomever, was walking, sees him, and crosses the road. And then somebody who's from a different race, who is supposed to be a bad person, would never consider being a good person and helping somebody without some transactional element to it. He comes and he sees him. So there in that moment, this stranger is looking down at this bleeding, broken, suffering person. And something happens as he reaches to him. It's coming out of his heart to offer assistance, to protect him from dying, because that could happen any moment. He's been pretty badly beaten. And in that moment, something is born. I think is what this is saying. That this man, this Samaritan, this stranger, this racial outcast, has just chosen to do something for a human being that is some kind of affecting of the life of God in a moment on the side of a road. So that's a deed. And so after that Samaritan is expired, he will live in that,
Oh, and that.
Mhm.
in that moment.
Yeah.
That's a
He will
really
And
nice idea.
that's his paradise.
Yeah.
And that will be paradise.
Yeah, I think about that all the time. And like when it's talking about death, I think it can be taken two ways. And one is spiritual awakening, as opposed to just the actual physical act. And that analogy, like that story, elucidates on that. Like, in that moment, it's an eternal moment, and it's a rippling moment, because that will motivate that person then to do something else for someone else, and that's how it keeps living on.
A rippling
It's like
moment.
energy is neither created nor destroyed, and in that moment, it does something different. Yeah. And I think also the purity of it, where it comes from, is also important. Like in that story, it came from just a place of pure, like you said, non-transactional. It wasn't about a transaction.
And at the same time, that priest who just crossed the street to avoid this, after he's gone, he's going to live in that same moment when he crossed the street.
He's
That's
gonna live
right.
that
And that's the hell, right?
Where
Yeah.
he crossed
Hell.
the
Hell.
street.
It's created.
That's the hell that he's created for
And
himself.
he's
Yeah,
gonna
because a
know
lot
for
of
sure that was, I did something really horrible to myself, not just to him, by ignoring him. So our lives are filled with all of these moments, and these are being recreated after we pass away. Or revisited, maybe not recreated.
Did you guys already talk about the paradises?
We haven't.
I want to hear
What
your
are those
take on
paradises?
this. I want to hear your take on this.
The Muslim one?
He says paradises here.
Oh. What is anything in Persian that is relevant here? Like the word deeds or?
I don't think so. I mean, I didn't look at it against the Persian word for word to sort of try to extract anything more than this.
Yeah.
And these are provisional translations, so there could be some inaccuracies, but
Right.
I don't think they're in bad shape. The multiple paradises is really interesting. The thing that comes to mind that might help a little bit is from another tablet of Baha'u'llah that I probably should have included here because it's to me one of those, I don't know, an axis around which a whole bunch of thoughts and concepts turn. It's a statement that Baha'u'llah makes about the nature of these multiple worlds. He says, for everything that exists in this world, he says every name, every attribute, every form, every substance, every specific thing, he says, there exists in each of the worlds of God a corresponding name, attribute, form, substance, and so forth. So it's almost as though it's a principle of correspondence, which it's an ancient idea. It goes back to Hermes and the idea that as above, so below, that there's a kind of, and Plato, of course, who's after Hermes as far as we know. There's the idea of the forms, that this physical world is an imperfect reflection of this higher, more perfect realm. But the statement of Baha'u'llah's extends that beyond just a two-level ontology into an ontology which is like a hall of mirrors. I mean, it's infinitely, it goes infinitely out. And it's an unbounded conception of the afterlife, but which has one interesting boundary, which is that it's not entirely unrelated to this world. This world and everything in it teaches us something about those worlds. Everything, all the processes of this world, the names and attributes and the things that are very concrete for us in this world, in some way are all the fingers pointing at the moon. In a way, they're indicating something about the realities of those multiple higher worlds. I still remember as a youth going to these Baha'i youth retreats at Bosch in California, and one of the events of the youth retreat would be the youth would all go on a walk in the forest, and they would be led around the forest, and they would stop at numerous points in the forest, and it would be pointed out, and there's a redwood forest, see the redwood trees, and what you see here physically is only half the tree and the other half is below the surface, and its roots are interlacing with other roots, and that provides structure that's invisible to us and relationship that's invisible to us, and just pointing out physical aspects of the world like that, the bark of the redwood trees and how they're scarred by fire, but the fire has a role and a function in the growth of the trees, and how all sorts of amazing little things that you can physically see, that each of which, it was pointed out, there's a deep spiritual idea here if you sort of have the eyes to see it. Then everything that's happening in nature can be telling out spiritual significances. And that always left such a strong impression on me as being, just such a grounded way of looking at the world and of navigating the world, that everything has something to tell us. Everything is teaching us something.
Didn't the Baha'i say something similar? A lot. That everything he saw in terms of a sign of God.
Yeah.
Every
Everything.
created thing in the whole universe is but a door leading into his knowledge.
Yeah.
That's Baha'u'llah.
Yeah.
And I've heard, if you want to understand God, you can study the sun.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but I remember the talk of Drawing Nigh to Baha'u'llah from Avitar that he did a talk in Alaska, like 1980. One thing that always sticks in my head what he said is, he said that God loves, I'm not sure where the source is, but he said God loves levels. He said in this world you have human, you have animals, plants, mineral kingdom. And he said in the next world will be similar, where depending on what your station is when you pass, you may be on a higher level, you may be on a plant level, or animal level, a plant level, or a mineral level. And when you're on a higher level, you're all-encompassing, and you can sort of visit people on lower levels, and on lower levels can visit people on higher levels. That freaked me out. But
yeah. And his response was, "You better come visit me." What makes you think? And if I visit you, am I allowed to tell you I'm on a higher level?
Have you heard that? Do you know what the source of that is?
Yeah, it's there are a number of places in the Baha'i writings where it does say that in the next world there are degrees, and those in a higher degree comprehend all the stations below, but don't comprehend the stations above. Right. Just like in this world.
Yeah. Just like in this world. Yeah.
Exactly
so those
the same
are the
in this world.
Paradises, which are the outcome of our deeds.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be a spiritual worm.
Yeah.
Right.
You need to do better.
Right.
Because a dog,
which is
see, a dog is happy, right?
That's
It doesn't have an issue with a human. It's happy where it is.
Yeah.
So Perry's so freaked out about being the dog in the next world.
I just don't want to be the dog.
We've had this conversation so many times. He's like, I just don't want to be a dog in the next world.
But that gets to my question about, are there levels of good, greater good, glorious good? I mean, maybe that priest was rushing to the deathbed of a man to give him consolation and last rites. I mean,
Or maybe
what
that's
human is to say?
maybe that's all the capacity he had, that he had reached his highest level of attainment.
Who knows?
And it wasn't, that's why we can't judge somebody, because only God can see what their capacity is.
I see.
We might be able to see
providing
their
the window for
behavior.
the other person to have a fulfilled moment.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's what our husbands are doing.
But yeah, I think that there would be those kinds of levels, because, and I think about it where, even though like even in the Baha'i writings it talks about evil, but evil isn't a force. And when you compare it with physics, there's absolute zero temperature, right? There's no negative temperature or darkness. There's no negative amount of light. Once you hit zero, that's it. So everything above that is an amount of light. Now, in comparison to, let's say, the general, what's accepted, that's evil. That's dark.
That's further away
So it's
from the
relative.
light.
Yeah. But so therefore, it seems like there must be in the spiritual
Some
reality.
gradations.
Yeah.
Well, there's that nearness to God too, which is a continuum. There's no point.
The existence
of nearness.
And
It's
that's
all,
infinite in itself, right?
it's all just nearer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So every world makes us nearer and nearer and more nearer to
Yeah.
God.
So I have a thought about inestimable delights, along with this idea of levels or degrees or whatever. That inestimable means to me that I basically can't figure it out.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I really like that. I said that last time I was here.
Yeah.
I like not knowing. But that when I first read this, I felt the same way that I remember kind of feeling in Sunday school about there will be halls of gold and blah, blah, blah. And
the
my
crowns
reaction
and the
was, that
jewels.
sounds really boring.
Yeah.
And so part of the inestimable delights, I'm thinking, must include difficulties.
Yeah. Or the
Because-
the analog of difficulties. If there's as Baha'u'llah says in that tablet, there's an analog for everything.
Yeah.
So if there's an analog for, say, progress, there's no time in the next world, but there's some analog for progress. There are no, maybe there's no exactly tests suffering in the next world the way we suffer in this world, but there's some analog of it and that's all we can really say. We can't understand in what way.
Among the highest
It's the
joys of my
case.
life have been the consequence of surviving through difficulties.
Yes.
Mm.
That's what I was thinking of. You put it better than I did earlier. That even the hardest thing actually allows me to have an insight I never would have had if I hadn't gone through that.
Yeah, there's a joy that comes out of going through such a dark time.
Yeah.
And it's not something, and you never want to go back to the
Yeah.
pain to experience
Yes.
that joy again, but then you don't regret the joy that you received afterwards. There's just something profound about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But isn't that what the reward would be in the next world? Like if you didn't receive, if you want to look at it as a reward for something you achieved or some hell you went through and then you passed, but those rewards are in the next world, so maybe that's the analog of it, if there is no suffering in the next world.
But there's tests. But we don't. But it's a different type of test, right? So I think my mind is starting to realize now that heaven and hell fit. I still am Catholic from the day I was born. So regardless of I'm Baha'i now, I'm still Catholic. But my brain starts to really comprehend the whole concept of like what that means. Like in this world, I think of the next world as the best place. It's going to be better than this world, and I can't wait to get over there. And everything's going to be, I'm going to be in so much joy. But what does that mean? Like, if there's going to be many, many worlds, that means that next world cannot be the epitome of all the worlds. There's going to be more worlds. There's going to be more tests.
Keeps it from getting boring.
Yeah.
Let's get deeper in. There's some more great stuff here.
That was just the first couple of sentences.
I know, you should have done it so they had something less to talk about.
The prophets and messengers of God have concealed the knowledge of that condition for the sake of protecting the human race. In truth, were one to reflect deeply upon that which the pen of the Most High hath revealed on his subject, it would be realized with absolute certainty that the faculty needed to perceive that world hath not been allowed to function in this world, lest man should perceive it and witness its reality. However, this much can be disclosed. Those souls which, at the moment of their death, are detached from all things and purified from the doubts of the peoples of the world, shall ascend, I swear by God. The lights which these souls radiate is responsible for the appearance of sciences, arts and crafts, and for the maintenance of the world of being. Such a soul shall endure forever. Its state of consciousness and perception, its power and capacity are beyond the minds of mortal men to grasp. The lights of these souls train the world and its peoples. Were the truth of this matter to be fully unveiled, everyone would seek to take his own life, and the affairs of the world would be thrown into confusion. Whoa!
It's about as clear as it
There's
gets.
so much there. Would anybody mind if we just reread that?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah, do you want to read
All right, I'll
it?
read it.
Okay.
The prophets and messengers of God had concealed the knowledge of that condition for the sake of protecting the human race. I guess that condition is this experience of the paradises that follow death. Okay. In truth, were one to reflect deeply upon that which the pen of the Most High hath revealed on this subject, it would be realized with absolute certainty that the faculty needed to perceive that world hath not been allowed to function in this world, lest man should perceive it and witness its reality. However, this much can be disclosed. Those souls which, at the moment of their death, are detached from all things and purified from the doubts of the peoples of the world. Those souls shall ascend. I swear by God, the lights which these souls radiate is responsible for the appearance of sciences, arts, and crafts, and for the maintenance of the world of being. Such a soul shall endure forever. Its state of consciousness and perception, its power and capacity are beyond the minds of mortal men to grasp. The lights of these souls train the world and its peoples. Were the truth of this matter to be fully unveiled, everyone would seek to take his own life, and the affairs of the world would be thrown into confusion.
You know, what came to my mind is, for the first time I thought about this, was the number of martyrs of the Baha'i faith. And if those souls that ascended are responsible for the appearance of the science, arts, and crafts, and then you think about what was going on in the world and the explosion in the sciences and the arts and the crafts, and that's in this century where the ascension of all these holy souls has occurred.
Which really started taking off around the mid-1800s.
Yeah, it sure had. It sure did.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is this saying that there's a requirement to have attained a certain stage to ascend? Is that what this is saying?
Let's talk about
I heard
detachment from
that
everything.
something that we have cannot ascend in this world, cannot be fully seen in this world, and that is what is going into the next world. That is seen in its full potential in the next world, or maybe I'm misunderstanding that.
The prerequisite seems to be detachment.
Detachment.
Yeah.
Right. And purification from doubt.
Yeah.
Well, from the doubts of the peoples of the world. So how are you purified from the doubts of the people of the world? I mean, who cares what the people of the world think? How is it being pure to be rid of that crap?
Maybe it affects us deeply. I mean, we're,
Yeah.
we're
Everybody
immersed in a
cares.
sea of materialism, in a sea of
Yeah,
Of-
and
false gods, basically.
it's the whole concept. Our society is constantly feeling alone, right? Isn't everyone at one point in their life in this world felt alone, felt like not understood by the people of this world? Each individual can empathize with that because it's a common theme that we all seem to have, which is, I think, maybe it's the feeling of not being detached.
Feeling of not being attached. Is that what you're saying?
No, but I think our society thinks we need to feel attached.
Belonging. Is that what you're
Belonging,
saying?
yeah. Like a common thing we all have. And the common thing when prisoners, for instance, when they put them in isolation, they go crazy because they that need to be a part of something, to be with people, to have that source. I don't know, my brain just started thinking about like that concept about if we all have that common empathy, that one common thing that we all feel in this world, maybe it's because it can't be seen in this world. We are not attached to that thing that we're missing in this world, that we have that we can't see because it can't live in this world, or it cannot be seen in this world. We all carry it, because that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing we carry something. We all have this light that cannot be seen in this world. And it's kind of like the same concept of like the manifestations all have the same knowledge. Every manifestation at every generation have the same knowledge. The difference is our perception of that knowledge and what we're hearing from that generation and what's important for that generation. So for instance, Christ didn't talk about equality of man and women because it wasn't a concept that we could have understood, nor was it a concept of the whole world. He was the one that brought up the whole world will know my name. That was not a concept for Moses. the people of that world didn't understand that. As well as being able to read for ourselves in our generation. We are literate, we can do that, but they couldn't do that during the time of Christ. They had to have disciples go out and spread the message. How else was it going to be spread? So like, there's like this kind of this understanding that I've been reading from the writings, which is all manifestations acquire the same knowledge, but how we perceive it during that generation is what we can attain for that generation. And so the same thing here is we all have something. We all have the same light. We're all part of the same light, the same under the same umbrella, or the same tree. What Baha'u'llah says later on. We'll read it. But we can't see it in this world. We can't feel it in this world. So maybe that's why we always feel that sense of loneliness.
Yeah. We can't see it because I always go back to I don't want to bore you by always going back to the same subject, but the movement of the cosmos, like writ large, is the movement from the one to the many and back to the one. It's one of the first philosophical problems that the ancient Greeks struggled with. How can you get many from one? And that's, I think, what you're talking about. I think is one aspect of that we are here in the realm of the many. And we came from one, and we're returning back to one. But the many is, in a way, a kind of illusion. It's like an illusion of many, because really it's the one. But the one is temporarily hiding itself from itself. At least that's the way they talk about it in Hinduism. That it's the veil of Maya. It's this like temporary veil that's cast over us that obscures us from the reality of our oneness and the reality of that we are all modes of the divine self-remembrance, remembering itself to itself, as the Bob puts it. And so if we realize that, I suppose Baha'u'llah expresses there's some danger involved in fully realizing that when you're in the mode of the many, and there's a point to being many. There's a point to it. And if you suddenly realized just how illusory the many was, you would probably just lose all incentive to do anything in this world. You would just want to return back to that oneness, because it would be so much infinitely better than being this isolated, lonely mote,
Yeah.
I've never heard that put in a way that landed. Thank you for that.
But there's also just so much exquisite beauty in the many.
There is. It's not all bad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We find that joy when we have communion, when we have these opportunities of like joining of the minds and the spirits and that concept, or just a pure love that we give to each other. We feel those moments. But when we're separated from those moments, that's where we feel the isolation and alone.
Or the holy longing.
Yeah.
I'd like to focus just a bit on that special collection of people that Baha'u'llah is pointing to right here. Those souls which, at the moment of their death, are detached from all things and purified from the doubts of the peoples of the world. So, just trying to get a sense of what he's talking about there, because we're talking about detachment, and we're talking about purification, and the purification is from the doubts of the peoples of the world. I don't think this means that he's talking about these are people who are purified from other people's doubts. I think the point is that the peoples of the world all have, in some respect, the same doubts.
Yeah.
And these folks who are passing into the next life are purified from that. They are just not anymore. And this is like a martyr, They're not anymore attached to anything anybody has to say or think or feel. And we live our whole lives in the social context. So to be actually purified, the purification means you're literally blessed by God not to be, in a sense, contaminated by the humanizing of your experience of your life, where you're humanized through the social shared experience of being an American in 2024, whatever it may be. But all of those things carry baggage. And so that's what they're being lifted out of. They're detached from things, and they're purified from all of this social baggage.
To put a point on that, like the exact antithesis of being purified from the doubts of the people is what is known as the like button.
Oh yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
It's like
Facebook
it's like
when you like
that's what
something
social
on your social media, you get
Oh,
that immediate
right?
gratification.
Do
People
Facebook.
liked it.
people liked it or they don't like it. You know,
Yeah.
there's a
That's
thumbs up
right.
and a thumbs down.
It's a real thing.
It's like the most, from that perspective, it's the most evil. It's the most
Yeah.
evil thing ever invented, because it pulls us from the realm of where we ought to be, which is not fundamentally caring what other people think about what we wore today or what we had for breakfast or something, and invites us into this space where every single thing that we do and say is put before a trial of our peer, a jury of our peers, to sort of
And they just get
thumbs
to be
up
there.
or thumbs down the thing.
Is this a good thing or a bad thing?
And it's what a horrible thing. And what a way to
It's tyranny.
totally mire you in the mesh of the world.
Yes.
Of to completely trap you within the realm of other people's expectations, other people's opinions. And how do we and there's no escaping it. If you're in social media, and any of these social medias that have the like button or whatever analog they call it, that's what it's doing. And to escape from that is such a blessing.
And of course, the business model of the social media is to drive people into likes and dislikes.
Yeah.
So they'll
Yeah.
come back and pay more
Yeah,
for the advertising.
drives engagement. Yeah.
So be detached from that era.
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah.
slight
Yeah.
touch of that, not wanting to come back into a glimpse of the next thing. This is when I'm having a really, really good dream. And I don't want to wake up.
Yeah.
I really want to stay in that dream, but damn, I'm waking up and then. But I have to. If I didn't wake up, things would get confused. And
Disorder.
I do have to wake up.
Confusion. Yeah.
Take it literally.
Yeah.
So you say,
So-
why were humans created at all? I mean, why are we created as mortal beings on an earthly plane?
With the freedom of free will and
Because God
individuals.
needed some place to stuff his gems.
Yeah.
Train our souls.
Yeah, I think we kind of alluded to a little bit of it, right? Which is which is just my thinking, which is through this suffering, through these hardships,
There's a
we're finding it. Yeah, we're seeing this joy that we could not have seen had we not experienced.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And
You know,
because
I wanna-
yeah.
I want to just quickly come back to my story of the Good Samaritan.
Oh yeah.
And I'm thinking of the priest. Now, maybe he really was a good guy on his way to save somebody's life, but maybe not. And if he weren't, in the life afterwards, when his mind goes back to that moment, unlike the Samaritan who steps into the joy of what he did, now he's stepping into a peculiar kind of different joy, which is the joy of, in the afterlife, realizing I didn't do what I could have done. But for the first time, it occurs to me that I might have done it that way. I'm a bigger person now.
Yeah, your consciousness is expanded.
Yes.
Isn't
Yep.
That's a
both-
paradise
it's
right
both
there.
There you go.
Paradise.
It's two things at the same time. It's humiliating to have thought.
Yeah.
I did that.
Yes, yes.
And at the same time, you feel gratitude, oh my gosh, I could have done that 1,000 times more if I didn't have this awareness. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so then you sort of feel also a quick thank you if your ego is a little more present. A quick thank you for I hope I don't do this again.
And a little flash of compassion.
For yourself,
For yourself.
because you can
Yeah.
see if you hadn't known what that did. Yeah, and the compassion part is important, I think, because otherwise it's just there's never an end to the torture.
I was a jerk, and I now realize,
Yeah.
in realizing I was a jerk, I get to be something much more than a jerk,
Yeah.
and be grateful for that.
Yeah. One hopes that you can do that. That's a very mature place to be.
But back to Barbara's question, why were we created? Maybe we could say something like, the universe exists through self-actualization, and we are part of that self-actualization of the universe, of God. And so our existence is not superfluous. It's not just, an addition onto something, but it's actually, it's the thing itself. Our existence is the thing that breathes life into the universe, that in a way generates the universe, because we are,
And we're also nothing.
and at the same time we're nothing. We're stardust and we're lowly dust. It's both at the same time.
It's both at the same time, because you can't be so full of yourself to think that we are literally the reason why God made Earth. And at the same, at the same time.
At the same time.
I'm looking around. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be happy about that?
I think that's why we need both the transcendent and the immanent in theology,
Yes.
because one of them awakens us to how awesome we are and how awesome the universe is, and the other keeps us humble.
Right.
And you
This
kind of have to
tension,
have
there's always
both.
a tension. Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, and I feel like every hidden word has both of those in it.
Yeah.
It's like it seems like there's one sentence that says how noble and all that, and then the next one is
why are you abasing this?
right. Yeah, something like that. Or be if there's detachment, then there's this, or there's always yeah.
So
You're
without
both a drop and the ocean.
Right.
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Rumi.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the drop. But that drop realizes, because you're part of the whole ocean, you can say, in that context, I am the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you recognize your connection with the ocean.
Yeah.
Can't be taken from me.
So without humans, with the capacity we've evolved to have, there would be no ability for the universe to be conscious of itself. Is that partly what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
As far as we know.
I would say, as far as
we know,
there may be life on other planets
Multiple
If it wasn't us, it would be something.
that's fulfilling that
Maybe
requirement.
there's multiple selves doing what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, just like there are
Asking
multiple
this
cells in our bodies that are doing their own thing, partly independently from each other, but also harnessed by the organism that is our bodies. And maybe there's other consciousness in the universe, which maybe not at the moment because we don't know about its existence, but at some point becomes cells of one larger body, and maybe and that is the universe, the universe becoming aware of itself. And that's when that's God loving his own essence, to use the phrase that from the Baha'i writings. And we're part of that.
Yeah.
That's the amazing thing, is that we're part of the process of God discovering and loving, its own essence.
That flow of energy. Flow.
Yeah.
Well, every time each one of us has this realization to expand our consciousness, the collective consciousness is expanded.
Yeah.
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 Shall we keep going? There's more good stuff here.
The next.
Okay, the next one. The prophets of God. The prophets of God have come in truth and have spoken the truth. Whatsoever the messenger of God hath announced hath been and will be made manifest. The world is established upon the foundations of reward and punishment. Knowledge and understanding have ever affirmed and will continue to affirm the reality of paradise and hell, for reward and punishment require their existence.
Oh boy, I gotta read that one again.
So there are consequences.
Consequences. And it's kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit. I mean, the way the logic is expressed here.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, we need order in the world, and so let's have reward and punishment so that we have order in the world. it's putting it posterior, like logically posterior to the thing which we think it would go in the other direction. We think, well, the fundamental reality is there are rewards and punishments in the next world. But Baha'u'llah is putting it as, yes, they're there so that we can have order in this world. Which is it's a really challenging thought.
But the concept that Baha'is have of what hell is isn't the concepts of what I was taught in my Presbyterian Sunday school.
So tell us the difference.
Well, I mean, the kind of damnation in hell is basically they would describe it as some form of physical torture that would last forever.
Yeah.
You're going to be burning, physically burning for the rest.
Burn in hell
Well, they
forever.
got that from Dante, I think.
Yeah, they got that from Dante. Some imaginary artist idea.
Well, Dante got it from the Bible.
Yeah.
So.
And my concept after being acquainted with the Baha'i writings is that everyone goes to the next world, and there is an afterlife. There is, and hell is a condition. It's not. It's a description. It's a relative term. The person in hell may not be aware that they are in hell.
Yeah.
They did a great TV show based on that idea.
Yeah. The
Good
Life.
Life.
Yeah.
Oh, the Good Life. That's right.
Because to me, it's nearness or farness, remoteness from God, the Creator.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's not, and the teachings also that there's progress in the next world. So it's not like, you don't get to grow anymore once you die.
Yeah.
It says no, there's progress to the souls. You know, it can be at different rates, and he even tells us how we can help that soul in the next world that we love to progress through our prayers and through the things we do in their name, and you know, those are the things that we can help the soul's progress in the next world. So there's a teaching that there's a connection still, and so it's not an eternal damnation that you will forever have to keep, you know, soaking the fires or something. You still get to progress.
Yeah.
Maybe you can work your way out of hell, I guess. or increase your nearness to God is always there.
Well, like the priest who skipped out on the died on the side of the road.
This guy again.
That was a moment of hell for him.
Yeah.
The moment he realized what he hadn't done.
Too great for God.
It's a realization of where you're at.
And he's fully aware that this man is bleeding to death,
Poor guy.
and he ignored him.
Yeah.
That all came to him, wallop. But you're right, it's not a place, and it didn't burn, but it kind of burns. You realize you did something like that.
That's a much worse burning, I think.
I have this theory, and I could be wrong, but let's go with this theory. My theory is, you can only acquire attributes and goodness in this world to take to the next world. You can't really take bad to the next world. So you can only acquire attributes and traits and skills and virtues here, right? So that's why certain people seem to not be going and leaving this world. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's some people who just seem to be living forever.
And I'm like,
I think it's because God's constantly giving them an opportunity to build some attributes of good and joy, and they're not getting it.
That's the key to longevity is to kind of keep pull back on your development.
I'm not suffering. What are you trying to say, God? I can't handle it. Like, you can have this conversation where it's like,
That's
why
way
do I
here people
suffer
here are
more?
starting to feel guilty.
I just feel like there's some people that they're not going into the next world. Yes.
So we are we're way past the hour mark. I don't know how much longer we want to go.
Let's stop here
We have-
and then pick it up from
From that spot.
Should we pick it up
here.
next week?
It is almost 8:30.
Because each of these 6 quotations
I think we want to.
could be
like
6 more
to say-
conversations,
I
and
do
we're having
like
fun.
to
So
break
sure.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.